In this series, Life Lessons of the Week. So for the past 2 weeks, we've been covering Phālguṇī nakshatras, Uttara and Purva Phālguṇī. And this week I want to do one more about the two of them together that'll tie up all the loose ends and make a few points that I may not have been able to make individually. Now, the Phālguṇī nakshatras are a pair. It's the first time that we encounter a pair. So let me just give you a brief word or two about why there are pairs of nakshatras sometimes. Remember that nakshatras are actually stars. They're actually based on, they're fields of space based on stars. So occasionally the constellation drawn by a star group, will be too big to fit inside the field. In those cases we get two nakshatras given one name, like Phālguṇī, and then there's a Purva and an Uttara. I want to talk more about what Purva and Uttara really mean, but before we do that, I want to talk about the name Phālguṇī, which really should be pronounced Phālguṇī. Every name of every nakshatra is jam-packed with the symbolic information of what that nakshatra is about. The word phal means fruit. Fruit means the result of an action. And then guna means the perceivable quality of something, right? So Phālguṇā, it literally means the part of the fruit that you can perceive. So it has to do with like a banana peel, or the skin of an orange, or the shell of a coconut. What is so special about the outside of a fruit, or the shell of a fruit, is that it carries the fruit. Right, so what Phālguṇī really means is the fruit bearer, the thing which houses the fruit, carries the fruit, brings the fruit to you, brings the fruit into being. So that's what this word Phālguṇī means. It means the fruit bearer, the fructifier, the thing that brings things into beings. So this point may not have been brought out too much when we studied the sutras individually in the last two videos. The point is that this nakshatra pair is very creative. That's an important implication of the word fruit. Fruitful means fertile and productive and creating. So Phālguṇī nakshatras are very instrumental in understanding the creativity of a person. Sometimes you might see translation, if you can look it up in a Sanskrit dictionary, you might see a translation of Phālguṇī meaning something like superficial or even unimportant. The reason for that is that, think about a banana peel, think about an orange skin, think about a coconut shell. It's not really the important part of the fruit. That's one reason why Phālguṇī has that implication. But the other reason is it's the skin only, superficial. So the takeaway for Phālguṇī is, if it doesn't work well, it might be superficial. But when Purva Phālguṇī works the way it should, it provides a great attention to form. It provides a great attention to the skin of the thing, the form of the thing, the shape of the thing, the perceivable aspect of the thing. It's very important for art, again, because art, what is art? It's the expression of wonderful, mysterious things in a concrete, perceivable, sensual form. So Phālguṇī is very good with giving things form. Okay, now we talked about what Phālguṇī means. Let's turn our attention back to those other two words, Purva and Uttara. Generally, you can translate Purva as meaning first and Uttara meaning second. So you can say like the first Phālguṇī is Purva Phālguṇī, the second Phālguṇī is Uttara Phālguṇī. The first part, the second part. It's a little bit inaccurate, but translation, but it gets the job done of communicating the basic idea. But to get more accurate with the translation, Purva is more about something that happens before something else, leads to something else, kind of like moves up towards something else. So it's the initial stage. Yeah, the initial stage is the Purva. And then Uttara, yeah, you can just say, well, it means the next one, the second one. But actually Uttara means that it's gone up higher. It's become higher. So it's like the initial thing and then the result, the first and the second. Yes, it means first and second, but it's like the stem of the plant and the flower of the plant. The flower is the higher thing. So when you want to understand the nakshatra pairs, whether it's the Phālguṇīs or the Ashadas or the Bhadrapadas, keep this in mind. The Purva Nakṣatra is the one that's all about the way you approach this topic, the way you can lead into this topic. The Uttara is about the full manifestation of the topic itself. So here with Phālguṇī, right? It's all about, Purva Phālguṇī will be about approaching that fruit bearer, and Uttara Phālguṇī will be about that fruit bearer making its fruit. You can read it in terms of the male-female dynamic, which is what we really covered in more detail in the previous two videos. The Purva Phālguṇī is the initiation of the relationship, and then the Uttara Phālguṇī is the consummation and effect of it. A Purva Nakṣatra is always classified as ugra, and Uttara Nakṣatra is always classified as dhruva. Ugra means fearless, brave, strong, has initiative. Dhruva means it's holding something together, it's patient and enduring, it's solidifying, it keeps things together, it supports other things. In creativity, the ugra is that spark, that exciting initial attraction, that bravery to try something. The same thing in romance, right? The Purva Phālguṇī will show how well a person can initiate a romantic exchange, but the Uttara Phālguṇī will show how well they keep them and hold the relationship together. Or with creativity, Uttara shows, yeah, you got your artistic inspiration. Now can you stick to it? Can you develop it? Can you make it more than just an idea? Can you make it real? Can you bring it to fruition? And finally, there's one last pretty crucially important thing that I want to cover when doing a video on the Nakṣatra Sūtra about Purva Phālguṇī and Uttara Phālguṇī. This is the topic of the Bhaga Aryama Switcharoo. Anyone who studied nakshatras a bit should know that Aryama and Bhaga are the gods who dwell in the Phālguṇī, two Phālguṇī nakshatras. However, most people will have been taught or think that Aryama is in Uttara Phālguṇī, the second one, and Bhaga is in Purva Phālguṇī. In fact, in my book, 27 Stars, 27 Gods, I present it that way. But the Nakṣatra Sūtra of Taittiriya Brahmana switches this around. So I want to give a word or two to explain why this switcheroo is done. The first thing that has to be said is this is definitely not a mistake. It's certainly not a mistake. It's certainly not a typographical error or a copying error in the manuscripts. Also, it's not isolated. In some regions in India to this day, a name that they have for Uttara Phālguṇī is Bhaga. So that's evidence that at some point in history it was fairly widely accepted that Bhaga was in Uttara Phālguṇī and Aryama was in Purva Phālguṇī. Now the problem is the list that we have from Ṛg Veda, which include its appendix, the Vedanga Jyotish, right? The list there definitely and unequivocally gives the other version, that Bhaga is in the first part and Aryama is in the second part. So you have two authentic sources giving you two different descriptions of what's going on. In the case where that happens, you have to try to understand how two different points of view coexist. Obviously, the people who wrote the Nakṣatra Sūtra would have known Ṛg Veda better than we did. So it's not like they didn't know about it, they came up with a different idea. So they're insisting that it must be this way. It's a different way than Ṛg Veda. We're going to present it a different way. Why? Why did they do that? So Aryama, otherwise known as Aryaman, Aryama is the commitment maker. This is what Purva Phālguṇī is all about. The whole life lesson of Purva Phālguṇī, which we talked about in that video, is what does it mean to be a real man? What is it that makes a man a real man, that attracts a woman to accept him? It's the quality of being Aryama, which means the ability to respect the promise. That's what Aryama does. Aryama is invoked all the time to sanctify contracts and vows. That's Aryama's role in Vedic culture. So the man who can respect a commitment, the man who can keep a promise, keep a vow, that's the man who's a real man. He's strong, he's powerful because he can do that. He can follow through on his promises. That's the man who can initiate who has the bravery to even make a promise. You know, in a romantic setting, what you're doing as a male is you're promising the woman that she's not going to be sorry if she gives you her treasures. So you got to be brave to be able to make that promise. You got to be able to think, I'm going to be able to keep this promise and follow through. Aryama is completely consistent, symbolically speaking, with the nature of Purva Phālguṇī, which is ugra. Ugra is that bravery and that power, that strength. Bhaga, on the other hand, Bhaga is a word for the fruit itself. The opulence, the wealth, or the fruit, the immediate fruit producer is indicated by the word Bhaga, as we discussed in the last video, which we did on Uttara Phalguṇī, which is all about what it means to be an ideal woman, right? So that's what Uttara Phalguṇī is all about, is the fruit itself, the treasures themselves. How do you actually produce the treasure out of this creative exchange? It was Vahamana, how do you fulfill the desire? The Ṛg Veda is concerned with ritual. The Nakṣatra Sūtra is concerned with symbolism. That's the beauty of the Nakṣatra Sūtra, is it's really well suited to what we do these days with the nakshatras, which is use them in interpretive astrology. So when you're dealing with rituals and what time you want to worship Aryama and what time you want to, you know, do things associated with Aryama, and stick with the Ṛg Vedas, tally that Aryama belongs in the second Phālguṇī. But when you want to stick with interpretation, then take all the symbolism associated with Aryama and put it in the first Phālguṇī, the Purva Phālguṇī, and take the symbolism associated with the Bhaga and keep it in the second. Okay? So hopefully this additional video has done what I wanted it to do, to tie up some of the loose ends and make a few additional points about nakshatra pairs, and then specifically the pair of Uttara and Purva Phālguṇī, and to give you at least a heads up about what's going on with the different ordering of the gods in these two nakshatras. So thank you very much for watching. Stick around all the time, so subscribe and get your notifications, please, so you can be there for the live sessions that I do every week. I do live sessions every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. in the Pacific time zone. And also every week I'm doing a video series, which right now is the Nakṣatra Sūtra series. So next week at this time, we'll be back with our Hasta Nakshatra video. And we'll study the life lesson that we get from the Nakṣatra Sutra's description of Hasta. Don't miss the life lessons from the other 26 star clusters of Vedic astrology. Subscribe to my channel now. And keep your ears up for announcements about the release of this book and the next online classes about it. Thanks.